Sorry. Wow, this is crazy. Do I need to do that now?
No,
I
mean, your mic heard mine, but...
Are you sure?
Sure. Ben, how are you doing?
Hi, everyone. We watched Citizen Kane.
I was talking to Ben.
Just Ben. We watched Citizen Kane.
No one else can watch this.
It was incredibly mediocre.
We're in the same room now.
Can you believe? Everyone, we're in the same room. How cool is that?
Noah moved across the country explicitly just for this tiny channel we've started together. No other reason. It's just for the channel.
It
right?
was just for Daniel, and also Daniel paid me $1.5 million.
I have that kind of money because I sold out to Amazon.
Also, this is for all of you folks. I will be doing the entire video like this, so they still have to just look at my profile.
I think a lot of people are going to be shocked to find out I have
a face?
I'm much taller than you naturally. This is our actual height difference.
Yeah, I'm only 5'6".
I'm 7'2". Are we ever going to talk about movies now that we're in the same room?
This video brought to you by Twisted Tea.
Fuck you,
Twisted Tea. Please
you
sponsor
taste
us.
like ass.
I mean, you suck.
So does Jeff Bezos, but, you know. They already cashed the check. What are they going to do?
You want to talk about the movie?
Yes, so we watched Lilo and Stitch.
Jesus Christ. We watched Citizen Kane this week, the #1 movie on the AFI Top 100 list. And I have to say, it was okay.
It was just all right for me. Well, I want to caveat that before everyone clicks off and dislikes. I think on a technical level, especially for the time it was made in, absolute marvel. Like, the way they captured so many of those shots with the limited tech and development of the artistry of the time, genuinely mind-blowing. I think I would enjoy watching a documentary on how this was made more than I actually enjoyed the fucking movie.
Absolutely. Same is true for the other movie that we watched and have not released yet because we need to redo it, which was Apocalypse Now. I think Hearts of Darkness, which is the documentary that is about Apocalypse Now, is far more interesting and worth investing in than Apocalypse Now.
I was continually marveling at how well this movie was made, partially because I was so bored. And I just want to get it, like, I'm sorry, seriously, the movie of Citizen Kane, it's just a rich dick being a dick until his dickishness comes back to bite. It's less, actually, I'll say it's classier Wolf of Wall Street.
I mean, yeah, which,
There's less cocaine and somewhat less orgies.
Well, I don't know how much cocaine was readily available in the 1940s, so it's entirely possible that if there were cocaine, there would have been a lot. I mean...
Ben, put up on screen when cocaine was invented.
And also how much cocaine was included in the original Coca-Cola recipe. Thank you. Also, here's what I will say in defense of Citizen Kane. To be #1 on something is already putting so much weight on you that when I go to watch it, there's so much expectation behind the film that if it falters in any way, I am already sort of waiting to be like, oh, well, you know, how is this going to be why am I not entertained at every second in the film? Like, why am I not? And, performance-wise and directing-wise.
The bar is actually at the roof. Like, the bar could not be higher.
It could, it's as high as it can go. And even for the #2 movie on the list, I'm like, well, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not #1.
Yeah. And what I mean, like, by saying I was bored, like, I absolutely admit the acting is sensational, especially for the time. The cinematography, incredible. The sound design, the score, like, all of it is knocking it out of the park. I get why so many people put it so high. But at the end of the day, was I going, like, was I interested? No.
No, not really. And I think the other thing too, when you watch movies that were made in, say, 2018, you have kind of a frame of reference of the past 10 to 20 years, right? Mm-hmm. And we are almost 100 years. I mean, we're 80 years out of when this movie was made, which was 1941.
Is that long?
So all the references that are in this movie are kind of lost on us, I think. So even if we watch a movie that's from the 80s, we're like, oh, yeah, it's the 80s. And you can tell by the way they dress and sort of like the way that they talk and the references. And I'm not going to catch all of those references that are made in this film.
And that's actually a really good point, because I feel like at multiple times there were people they spoke in a way where I didn't feel connected with them. And it didn't feel like I admit these are incredible performances, but to me it felt more like a stage play at many different points. So there was also kind of this dissonance for me. Like, I never felt immersed in the movie because so much of it, the way it was blocked, the way the actors were projecting their voices, it didn't feel as natural as the language of cinema has gone into.
Yeah. And even, you know, at this point when it's made, it's not that new of a medium, right? But we are still experimenting with it a lot. And to Citizen Kane's credit, Orson Welles is really is pushing the medium a lot, in large part because he's coming from theater and radio. And so he actually, and I mean this kind of literally, he doesn't really know the limitations of what you can do with film at the time. And so he has a really talented cinematographer. And he just tells the person to do things without really understanding that this is not something that has really been done before in film. So that, you know, that ends up working well to him. And they also gave him an unreal budget for this film, which he still went over. But they were basically like, Orson Welles, you're a genius. Please make whatever movie you want to make.
And that was partially due to his, he got that green light because of how successful his War of the Worlds radio drama was, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which
is one of my favorite stories ever.
So glad you brought it. Do you want to tell that story real quick?
Well, it's been exaggerated again and again and again. So I want to tell, like, as true to I know as it being after researching this for school subjects and stuff and really finding it to be a fascinating moment in entertainment history. Orson Welles very intentionally did a rendition of War of the Worlds where he timed it out to start and give a warning that nothing that was about to be said was going to be real right before everyone was tuning over to the radio station. They knew everyone tuned to it this certain time. And then it started with basically it sounding like a rewritten, reinterpreted version of War of the Worlds where the world is actually just being invaded in a news report setting. And so everyone started thinking these are like actual Martians coming in to invade. Maybe a couple people died as a result because there was a lot of panic.
I do think that a couple people died.
So not cool, Orson Welles. Neat, not cool. There's a very fine line. And so that was such a success, despite the human cost, that Hollywood came knocking. It was like, this guy's clearly got a knack for some form of entertainment. And was his first film then Citizen Kane?
I believe Citizen Kane was his first film. And
Yes.
I may be wrong on that, but I feel fairly confident about it. And that's 90% of what being right is anyways.
Yeah.
But do you know one of the other reasons why I'm so glad that you brought that up is because I think the first words that you actually hear Orson Welles speak, and this is at the beginning when they're doing the newsreel about his death, are, you know, the reporter comes up to him and he says something like, well, don't believe everything you hear on the radio. And I just think, you know, and this is essentially immediately following War of the Worlds. And I just think that's kind of a nice little like nod, a little tongue in cheek.
I killed people. Ben, please correct me if no one died. We're making him do so much research right now.
Oh, it's going to get so much worse. I'm going to just start making the most absurd claims. And so Citizen Kane, actually, you know, I do want to say something, I guess, that's a little bit against what you said, which is that Orson Welles' performance, I loved it. And also it's cool to see because he wrote the screenplay, directed it, produced it, and starred in it. Like, that's a pretty impressive feat to accomplish. And to have it be successful, because otherwise you come out just looking like an absolute...
Also directed, right?
Yes, yeah.
You said directed? Oh, my bad.
Because if it's not successful, you just come out looking like an absolutely insane egomaniac, which it's, you know, entirely possible that he was. But still, his performance is impeccable. The person whose performance I enjoyed the least was his friend Jedediah Leland.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't find it. I mean, I thought he was believable when I guess he was playing his own age, but even then it seemed kind of ham-fisted. And a lot of the main actors in this film are coming out of Mercury Theater, which was Orson Welles' theater. So it is entirely possible that this is sort of their first entrance into film. So Orson knows that they are like talented stage actors, but it doesn't necessarily translate well into film. But yeah, the actor who plays Jedediah Leland, when he plays an old version of himself, I found to be the like hokiest thing. It was so hard to take seriously.
I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I kind of just because at that point I think I had just kind of accepted this is going to be more stage-esque than film, and so for me it kind of came across like when you see a stage actor do an old person and they're too shaky, they're too
right.
That was a lot of the acting for me. It was over the top because it felt like it was supposed to be picked up by someone in the back of a theater, not necessarily the camera.
Right.
And so I just kind of had shifted to that mindset. I will say I love Orson Welles' performance. But when he got older, I was most captivated by how well he captured this character getting older. I think he had the best old person performance of anyone in the movie. Because when he's young, he's got this snark, he's got this wittiness. You know, he's always got that quip out the pocket.
Yeah, he's ready for you.
He's a dick. Like Orson Welles in this is a bad person, pretty much. This is about the downfall of. It's very Jordan Belfort-esque. It's the downfall of someone who's falling victim to the consequences of their own actions.
Sure.
And I love that once we got the jaded, angry version of him, I didn't expect the film to go this way. It's really depressing. Like, he is someone who has everything, but he has nothing. And that's obviously juxtaposed with his final wife basically yelling at him like, you've given me so much, but you've never given me anything that mattered.
Yeah.
And you've never given me something that actually meant anything. And that's like a beautiful like reflection of the hollowness of his life at this point, because, you know, so many people are saying again and again, the only thing that matters to him is that people love him, and he has no love to give.
Right.
And it was just like, if there's any part of this movie I genuinely love, it is the fact that it is a character study of a very flawed person. Every bit around that, which is 80% of the movie, I think was flawless. My problems just come in with the language of the film communicating to the audience, and it's purely because of how young I am compared to this film.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think pacing too, for me anyways, I think that other people have said that it's paced very well, and it is an interesting way to tell the story where you are delving into this person's life through the tales and stories of different people who knew him, and so you're never actually getting Charles Kane's take on himself. Mm-hmm. You're getting, you know, how other people viewed him and people who had very different roles in his life. And I find that's incredibly interesting. But it did feel slow in parts to me, especially the intro where you have his death reel, which is like 12 minutes of the film. And that, I don't know, I was not captivated enough by that. There was, you know, to the point where I was actively pausing the movie, and I was like, are we into the movie yet? Is this still like a reel? I kind of lost track of that for a moment.
I respectfully disagree. Well, no, this is YouTube content. I angrily disagree, you I found it added a lot of weight. So this front loading, this establishment, I actually found that really interesting, because to me, it was just like, okay, this person's important. Oh, this person's like the biggest thing ever. This person was maybe going to be, this is the biggest fucking person of their era who wasn't a politician. So I actually, it really laid that in. And that actually, I've actually had this in my notes that I don't have next to me right now. I was actually going to mention this. To me, this is the earliest film that I've watched that really felt like an epic. In the terms of how it's telling its story, I would be comfortable in calling Citizen Kane an epic. It spans this vast piece of time. It's kind of the way it's framed through someone recounting almost historic events. It really did have that kind of oomph to me to elevate it to the point where I'm like, oh, I'm watching a historic figure.
Sure.
Despite them being entirely fictionalized.
As far as this being a fictional character, C.F. Kane is a fictional character, but it is essentially William Randolph Hearst's life story, to the point that Rosebud kind of has a gross connection to it. And also there's a whole sort of like ploy by Hearst to like get this movie kind of blackballed and burned in Hollywood, which is why fictional character, but I mean, essentially it's the story of William Randolph Hearst, who is born extremely wealthy and then becomes a newspaper magnate and then uses his influence in the tabloids and media to try and launch himself as a politician. Yeah. So, and has this giant, like, ridiculous estate. Hearst Castle is really massive and beautiful, and you can tour it today if you live in California.
You call it beautiful, I call it gaudy and gross and tacky.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's never been my taste. If you're someone who likes giant, ornate things,
that's exactly my taste.
Go, okay.
My house is, I have no house, I only have statues.
Noah has 4 lions?
I have spent all of my life savings, which was about $500 on 4 lions. They're about this big.
Oh, you paid the extra for the tiny lions? The pocket lions?
Oh, which actually reminds me, I have a pocket lion here.
There it is, yep. He does that. That was funny for you all. That was the 800th time for me.
Did it work?
No.
Oh.
Wait, what are you trying to... Oh, god damn it! I actually fell for that.
In the film, and this is a spoiler alert to anyone out there who has not seen Citizen Kane, which if you haven't, I don't blame you, but it is one of the, I wouldn't call it a plot twist, but it is essentially, it's the main driving mystery of the film. So if you don't want to know the spoiler about what Rosebud is, I don't know.
It's the initiating mystery.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's what drives the plot. Rosebud in the movie is the sled that Charlie Kane gets for his first Christmas with...
Well, we don't know that till the very end. At first, it's just his last word. And so the reporter who's going through his life, interviewing all these important people, is trying to figure out why the hell he said Rosebud. And in the last shot of the movie, almost like if it was now, it'd be a post-credit scene. Mm-hmm. You see people taking his childhood sled, which is set up at the beginning with him playing with in the backyard. We see it getting thrown into a fire, and it says Rosebud on it.
Just one of a million memories from this man who kept everything in his life.
Which I also like that it's clearly a callback to the love he had for his mother, who saved him that day from being with an abusive father and all this stuff. And his mother really is an amazing character for having like 2 minutes of screen time. Really like her.
There is some, I will say, there is some weight to that scene. That was a pretty well crafted scene because it's set up to make you not like the mother, who you're sort of led to believe is basically selling her son because she lives on top of a gold mine. Like she stands to inherit an insane amount of wealth. And then you find out that she's actually doing it to get him away from his abusive father, and you're like...
With one really efficient exchange of dialogue where she goes, you think he deserves to be thrashed, that's why you're never going to be able to get your hands on him. And I was just like, oh! The writing is good.
No, it was quick. That was a excellent reversal of sort of expectations for that film, for that shot. And the actual scene where they do throw the sled into the fire... that was that whole little like 2-minute narrative where the journalist is actually giving his sort of speech about, he was a man who had everything and had nothing, and maybe Rosebud is something that he never had or something that he had and lost, something to that effect. That was, and to see that actual thing be tossed into the fire and something that, will remain a mystery to the characters in the film, but not to us, that actually... to me, carried some weight.
Yeah.
The gross little fact about Rosebud is that it is what William Randolph Hearst called his wife's clitoris. So there's your little 1940s trivia.
Ben, if you could put a photo of the clitoris up. So I think that kind of takes us to our, I would say, like more in-depth actual opinions on the movie. I just want to say I do think it is a great film, wildly impressive. Definitely a must-watch for anyone who considers himself a cinephile. I'll never rewatch it.
Same. I don't feel the need to tire myself out with it again. I'm glad that I watched it, but I don't feel compelled to watch it again.
I will go more in depth in my disagreement. I actually think the entire film is extremely well paced. Every plot beat, I think, stayed its exact proper amount of time. The scandal of the love affair, the development of the newspapers, the montage. This is maybe my most controversial point. I wanted it to be a little slower. This is only 2 hours, which for how much this movie covers is a tight 2 hours. One final edit that I find so funny, and I can't find too many sources on this, but I think it's true. You know the bird edit that's super weird?
Which bird? No?
There is at really like the last 20 minutes of the movie.
Okay.
There is an edit where transitioning between two scenes, you just see this white, I think it's like a cockatoo or a parrot or something, just go like,
oh yes, the scream, yes,
in between two scenes, and it's completely unjustified. It's just weird.
Oh, it scared me.
Yeah, apparently that was a note from someone behind the scenes who thought the audience would be asleep and wanted to wake them up before the movie was over.
Wow.
That is why that was put there.
Well,
quite literally to start everyone awake.
It worked.
Yeah, it's genuinely like actually a jump scare. Like I watched that and went, fuck.
Yeah, I did. Wow. That would be hilarious if that were true. So I hope someone out there has some resources or Ben.
I was going to say that everybody remembers, get this in, everybody remembers that one scene where you suddenly cut to a cockatoo screeching just before.
That was to wake up the audience.
It's as simple
That's
as
the entire significance of the cockatoo.
I just can't get I can't get a pretentious answer out of you.
Editor and or fact checker, go him. But that leads us to our final question. I will ask you, do you think this belongs in the AFI Top 100?
I do think it belongs in the AFI Top 100. It is not my number one, and it's really hard for me actually to put anything at the number one exactly for the reason that we established earlier, which is as soon as you put something that high, it becomes immediately, you have to look at it more critically and ask, and then there's immediately all these things that you're saying about a film that's number one. It's like, okay, well, is that genre now number one? Is it the acting? Is it the directing?
Yeah.
What kept you entertained? Like,
you're trying to objectify subjective art.
Yeah, and it's an incredibly difficult and dare I say impossible thing to do. So,
which we will be forcing ourselves to do. I would put it in my top 20.
Top 20?
Purely out of appreciation and its influence, and I think a damn near perfect character study. It'd be in my top 20.
Sure. No, it is a really, and just for, again, sheer scope of, being able to effectively and dramatically delve into one person's life. So yes, it does belong in the AFI. I would say top 30 for me, maybe like 29. And I know that's bumping it down a lot, but there are so many movies on this list that we have yet to see. And there are some movies that I think we've already seen. I'm so in love with Sophie's Choice. It's hard for me to not compare these two directly, even though they were made multiple decades apart.
I just can't imagine how this got put above Schindler's List. We just watched Schindler's List, and I still find myself thinking about that movie all the time.
I meant to say Schindler's List. I'm sorry. I said Sophie's Choice.
That's right. I was trying to be like, we haven't watched Sophie's Choice. I don't
even know if it's on the list.
Now, I'm going to answer our follow-up question if you don't mind first.
No, please do.
Whether or not it should be remade, yes, except I want to see this exact same formula applied to the founder of Fox News.
Oh, Rupert Murdoch?
Mm-hmm. I want to see the same approach to him because it's a eerily similar story in a lot of ways. In terms
really
of
similar.
Someone trying to start a media empire to control narratives. There's even a line where he says they'll think what I say, they'll think what I tell them to think.
People will think
what I tell them to think.
And I was like, that's Fox's News. Like
Seriously.
slogan. Yeah, like, okay, we're going to just tell people shit and make them think things.
Yes, I agree with you. I think it should be remade. I would love it. I like your pitch already.
And because I'm a shitty liberal, or leftist, I want to call it Citizen Foe, and it'd be FAUX.
That's clever. Oh,
Thank you.
Good work.
Thank you. Fuck you, Republic. No,
Seriously, though.